What are some of the creepiest declassified documents made available to the public? Jeffrey Dahmer's full confession, a couple of 100 pages of pure madness. Necrophilia. Dismemberment. Skinning. Lobotomy. Body part preservation. Cannibalism. Dahmer became pretty close to his interrogating detectives, Dennis Murphy and Patrick Kennedy, and provided a lot of detail to them. A lot of it in a pretty candid, offhand manner. It's incredibly hard to find Dahmer's confession online without it being behind a paywall. But it is in the public domain. So I've provided link to the PDF downloads. The first 63 pages are mainly forms and letters. The real meat of the confession starts afterwards. Part 1. Part 2. Operation Northwoods. Basically, the U.S. government was going to carry out attacks its own people, as well as other military targets, and blame it on the Cuban government, so that the U.S. would have a justified reason for going to war with Cuba. The plan involved blowing up U.S. ships and even inciting acts of terrorism on the streets of America, killing civilians. It was backed by the DoD and Joint Chiefs of Staff. Thankfully, John Kennedy vetoed the idea. According to Adam Walensky, JFK's speechwriter and friend at the time, JFK left the meeting and said, "And we call ourselves the human race." Edit. Changed RFK to JFK. Because I'm a dumbass. Also, I get it, dudes. 9/11 was an inside job. After the My Lai massacre, killing of around 400 to 500 innocent civilians in Vietnam after an army troop killed an entire village, the U.S. government established a group to investigate other war crimes like this occurring in Vietnam, the Vietnam War Crimes Working Group. They found 28 massacres of equal or greater magnitude than My Lai that the public was unaware of, so literally thousands of innocent people killed by U.S. soldiers. The information has since been reclassified. But there were several journal articles on it when it was first released. Not sure if it's creepy, but certainly disturbing. Edit. Here's a link to an article about it by the LA Times from when it was originally declassified if anyone is interested. I remembered the details wrong. It was 7 larger-scale massacres, and 203 reported events of war crimes, murder of civilians, torture, etc. The article goes into more detail. Not sure if it's declassified, but the case of Hisashi Aochi. He was a Japanese nuclear plant worker who was exposed to a lot of radiation which left him looking like a Fallout ghoul. They kept him alive for 3 months even though he was in a lot of pain. His heart even stopped 3 times in an hour, but they kept on resuscitating him. I don't know much about it, but it is interesting to read about. Methods of reported torture that author Douglas Valentine wrote were used at the interrogation centers included rape, gang rape, rape using eels, snakes. The infamous Tuskegee syphilis study. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. Also known as the Tuskegee syphilis study or Tuskegee syphilis experiment, SKI, Tuskegee 1, was an infamous clinical study conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the U.S. Public Health Service. The purpose of this study was to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis in rural African American men in Alabama under the guise of receiving free health care from the United States government. 1. The study was conducted to understand the disease's natural history throughout time and to also determine proper treatment dosage for specific people and the best time to receive injections of treatments. 2. The Public Health Service started working on this study in 1932 in collaboration with Tuskegee University, a historically black college in Alabama. Investigators enrolled in the study a total of 622 impoverished African American sharecroppers from Macon County, Alabama. Of these men, 431 had previously contracted syphilis before the study began, and 169 did not have the disease. The men were given free medical care, meals, and free burial insurance for participating in the study. The men were told that the study was only going to last 6 months. But it actually lasted 40 years. 4. After funding for treatment was lost, the study was continued without informing the men that they would never be treated. None of the men infected were ever told that they had the disease. And none were treated with penicillin even after the antibiotic was proven to successfully treat syphilis. According to the Centers for Disease Control, the men were told that they were being treated for bad blood. A colloquialism that described various conditions such as syphilis, anemia, and fatigue. Bad blood, specifically the collection of illnesses the term included, was a leading cause of death within the Southern African American community. 4. Not so much creepy but rather pretty freaking cool in a 50s sci-fi B-movie kind of way. Project 1794 top-secret program with the U.S. Air Force working with a Canadian aeronautics company to build a supersonic flying saucer-like aircraft that would be able to simultaneously wage psychological war on our Cold War enemies as well as physical war. It was also designed to be a bomber. The project was scrapped when they figured out that not only would it be too expensive to build enormous flying discs, but also that crafts of that shape were near impossible to fly at supersonic speed. In 1984, a psychic remote viewed the planet Mars for the CIA. In his remote view he's asked to travel backwards to several points in time in Mars history and several points of interest using coordinates. The psychic ends up describing things like some sort of planetary catastrophe, strange structures, including pyramids, and the strange inhabitants on the Red Planet. Whether you believe in aliens and conspiracy theories or not, it's definitely weird that an official branch of the government has run experiments like these. And GT. It was fun. 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 Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape and pillage with the sanction and bidding of the All-Highest? George Hunter White, who oversaw drug experiments for the CIA as part of Operation Midnight Climax. MK-Ultra was pretty fucked up. CIA created mind control program that tried a bunch of different things to control behavior in people. Paid people to be LSD test subjects by picking them off street and paying them in cocaine just to leave for them dead after. Among other stuff. Unabomber was a test subject and it fucked him up and led to him killing people. Also the author of One Flight Over the Cuckoo's Nest was a test subject. Not exactly creepy. But Operation PBSUCCESS. The CIA-backed coup in Guatemala at the behest of the United Fruit Company and U.S. State Department. The official CIA history of the operation is truly one of the most fucked up things I've ever read. It was also the blueprint for the Bay of Pigs and other CIA interventions around the world. The CIA was working on a heart attack gun back in the 1960s to 70s. It started off as a conspiracy theory but gained enough momentum nationwide that it forced the US government's hand and they finally admitted the theory was mostly accurate. Short version. They never had a fully functional heart attack gun. But they did have a nearly working prototype. The idea was that it would have a very small projectile that would be laced with a chemical that would induce a heart attack and leave a hole smaller than one left behind by a syringe. While they never had a fully working version, they did have a prototype but abandoned the project once they more or less had to admit the conspiracy was mostly true. I find this to be among the creepiest, scariest things declassified by the government simply because of the consequences of them admitting to having been working on such a weapon. For one, it shows that the US government was very serious, at least at one point in time, about being able to take someone out with it being easily traced back to them. Whether they would have used this on private US citizens or on foreign agents is debatable. But they easily could have used it to silence people who were pushing to further advance civil rights or people who generally spoke out against the government in general. It's also scary because it makes you stop and think how many conspiracy theories are correct or at least scarily close to being correct. Disclaimer. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I do find them interesting and tend to read up about them but have never bought into very many of them. I mostly just find them interesting. In the 1940s a Swedish group of scientists gave mentally ill patients candy to see the effects it would have on their teeth. What makes it especially bad is that. And GT. These experiments were performed on people who were uneducable who had no say in what went on and needless to say their teeth were beyond repair. Source. Once again in the 1940s to 50s the US government in an attempt to study the effects radiation had on newborns and pregnant women, gave doses of radiation to newborns and pregnant children women. And GT. In one study, researchers gave pregnant women doses of iodine 131. When they inevitably miscarried, they studied the women's aborted embryos in an attempt to discover at what stage And to what extent? Radioactive iodine crosses the placental barrier. Link. Edit. Here's links to more creepy stuff. Jonestown recording link to audio YouTube. A cult leader caused the mass suicide of over 900 people. In the Cold War, both sides used satellites to take pics of each other. Here is one from the US over 50 years ago. They could take pictures of a golf ball from space. Imagine what they can do now. And GT really does make you think. And GT Wikipedia page for it with more pics. Edit. Due to popular request, I could not find a link to a picture of a gold ball from space. This is the closest I could find. 20 secs into the video. It shows pictures of people from space and their bags. Edit 2. Adding more creepy stuff. Edward Snowden leaked files from the NSA. Reveals all the ways you're getting tracked by the NSA. Link. And to his website with new leaks. And GT. Keep in mind that as time passes by, their methods of trackings get more and more advanced and we don't know any of it. Also small TLDR. And GT. Everything you post, send or receive is intercepted by the NSA and they look out for keywords. And GT. They store everything interesting about you. And GT. They can search up what they have stored via email, IP, phone number, location and keywords. And GT. They make loads of trojans and malware, leaked via shadow brokers, hacker group and others. And GT. An exploit made by NSA called Eternal Blue was used by hackers for the WannaCry ransomware. Edit. Safe for Gold Stranger. Not really classified. But very creepy. The business plot of 1933, the wealthiest businessmen of America. Like the names you see on banks and buildings in America today. Allegedly formed a plot to overthrow President FDR and install a military leader in his place. Their choice was a U.S. Marine general named Smedley Butler, as he was a decorated leader of the highest rank. Butler, a loyal patriot, played along until they were seriously about to attempt to collapse the U.S. economy by holding the financial stability of the country hostage. He rolled on them and testified to Congress about the planned coup. No one was prosecuted. General Smedley Butler may be the reason the world does not, officially, have a society like the United Corporations of Rockefeller, Morgan and Chase. Source. Had an activist U.S. Govit professor. Unit 731 is completely fucked. Definitely the Jonestown death tape. That shit proves to be a solid way to lose all chances of sleep. So, here's some context. Jim Jones started a cult called the People's Temple, yes, without the apostrophe, and eventually they moved to a new settlement they built in Guyana called Jonestown, named after their leader, since he made them believe he was some form of the Messiah, as a lot of cult leaders did. He could control them all to do whatever he pleases. And one of the things they did was practice drinking Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid as commonly believed, to prepare themselves for the time when they commit revolutionary suicide. These practices were just normal Flavor Aid, Kool-Aid. But Jones told them it was poison just to see their reactions. When the time came, someone recorded what was, essentially, the sounds of people drinking Flavor Aid laced with cyanide, alongside a fatal cocktail of other substances. Many victims, including young children, which you could hear screaming in the audio. 900 or so people died. Only a few didn't. This was the biggest loss of American life in a deliberate act until 9/11. And there is an audio recording of it. And just a very strong reminder, this wasn't mass suicide. This was mass murder. Many people were willing to die at his hands. But all the children and some of the adults didn't. Since all of them were forced to take the drink. It wasn't their own choice to drink it. It was Jones's. So, whilst people believed that it was a suicide, they were all duped into being murdered by Jim Jones. Edit. Fixed the largest loss of American life, fact to add, in a deliberate act. And talked a bit more about how it was mass murder. Not mass suicide. Not really creepy but more weird. The Pentagon commissioned an initiative called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and they recently just released footage of U.S. military aircraft approaching these advanced aerospace threats. I mean, what the hell are these guys doing? A man named Joseph McMoneagle claimed he had the unusual talent known as remote viewing, where he had the ability to see the world through another person's eyes at any physical place. And any place in time. The CIA ran a test on him in 1984 where they tried to discredit his ability. They gave him a piece of paper with coordinates and a date and time written on it, and told him to tell them what he saw. The catch was the coordinates were on Mars and the date was 1,000,000 years in the past. However, to their surprise, when McMoneagle began to describe what he saw, he described an unfamiliar landscape, and said that he viewed a civilization in dire state. He then went on to describe complex infrastructure spanning the strange landscape, such as roads, aqueducts, channels and pyramids. He described the entities that he saw as tall shadowed figures, and it appeared that their situation was critical, and on the brink of apocalypse. The CIA declassified the entire transcript, which can be read by anyone online. How about Nixon's undelivered speech announcing that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were stranded alive on the Moon with no hope of rescue? The CIA were informed that Hitler was hiding out in South America in the 50s, and thought it credible enough they investigated. There's even a photograph of the suspected Hitler with the principal source of information. Warning: edit. People are claiming it automatically downloads a PDF from the CIA's website, which wasn't my experience, but I thought I'd put a warning here. Who was also a former member of the SS that believed the Allies couldn't prosecute Hitler for war crimes because it had been too long. Sleep deprivation torture. That shit is fucked. Operation Northwoods. Toybox killer transcript. Dude and his wife kidnapped young girls for his sex dungeon and played this tape for them when they woke up, detailing what he was going to do to them, including torture, raped by his dog, and how he doesn't get caught by brainwashing them to forget. Edit. Warning. Once you read, you can never go back. Be prepared to have your soul shaken. The Senate Intelligence Committee report on torture. This is one of a couple things that I really dislike Obama for. He said we should look forward, not backward, regarding our government committing torture and whether we should prosecute the people responsible or not. Here are some of the public findings from the report. NGT. Examples of torture and abuse of prisoners. NGT. The CIA had force-fed some prisoners orally and/or anally in order to establish total control over the detainee. NGT. The committee found that at least 5 CIA detainees were subjected to rectal rehydration, or rectal feeding without documented medical necessity. NGT. At least 1 prisoner was diagnosed with chronic hemorrhoids, an anal fissure and symptomatic rectal prolapse, symptoms normally associated with a violent rape. NGT. CIA officials Scott Miller and James Pavitt were told that rectal exams of at least 2 prisoners had been conducted with excessive force. NGT. Threats were made to rape and murder children and/or family members of prisoners. NGT. In November 2002, the CIA killed at least 1 prisoner during interrogation by hypothermia. No CIA employees were disciplined as a result of his death. NGT. At least 4 prisoners with injuries to their legs, 2 with broken feet, 1 with a sprained ankle and 1 with an amputated leg, were forced to stand on their injuries. NGT. Prisoners were told that they would be killed. For example, 1 prisoner was told, "We can never let the world know what I have done to you." Another was told that the only way he would be allowed to leave the prison would be in a coffin. NGT. 1 CIA interrogator who was subsequently sent home early threatened a prisoner with a gun and power drill and played Russian roulette with him. NGT. At least 2 prisoners were victims of mock executions. NGT. Several prisoners almost died and became completely unresponsive or nearly drowned during waterboarding. NGT. Abu Zubaydah's eye was so badly damaged during his time in prison that it was surgically removed. NGT. Prisoners were kept awake for over 1 week, 180 hours, causing at least 5 to experience disturbing hallucinations. NGT. 1 prisoner was psychologically traumatized to the point of being a broken man, but CIA operatives stopped short of completely breaking him. NGT. Prisoners were forced to use buckets for toilets. As punishment, the waste bucket could be removed from a prisoner's cell. NGT. A report by the Federal Bureau of Prisons found that they had never been in a facility where individuals were so sensory deprived, i.e., constant white noise, no talking, everyone in the dark, with the guards wearing a light on their head when they collected and escorted a detainee to an interrogation cell. Detainees constantly being shackled to the wall or floor. And the starkness of each cell, concrete and bars. There is nothing like this in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Detainees were not being treated humanely. Edit. U. Absian correctly pointed out that the last part of the quote on the Wikipedia page is incorrect. The correct quote is, and GT, they have never been in a facility where individuals are so sensory deprived. I.e. constant white noise. No talking. Everyone in dark. With the guards wearing a light on their head when they collected and escorted a detainee to an interrogation cell. Detainees constantly being shackled to the wall or floor. And the starkness of each cell, concrete and bars. There is nothing like this in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. They then explained that they understood the mission and it was their collective assessment that in spite of all this sensory deprivation, the detainees were not being treated inhumanely, sick. They explained that the facility was sanitary. There was medical care and the guard force and our staff did not mistreat the detainees. And GT. Janat Ghul was tortured for months based on false accusations made by an informant. And GT. One prisoner was placed in a box the size of a coffin for over 11 days and was also placed for 29 hours in a box 21 inches, 53 centimeters wide. 5 feet, 76 centimeters deep and 5 feet, 76 centimeters high. And GT. CIA interrogators used unauthorized forms of torture such as forcing a prisoner to stand with his hand over his head for 2.5 days. Putting a pistol next to his head and bathing him with a stiff brush. And GT. One detainee was subjected to ice water baths and 66 hours of standing sleep deprivation. He was later released as the CIA had mistaken his identity. And GT. Torture of prisoners led to serious mental harm, e.g. dementia, paranoia, insomnia, and attempts at self-harm, including suicide. And GT. Of the 119 known detainees, at least 39 were tortured by the CIA. In at least 6 cases. The CIA used torture on suspects before evaluating whether they would be willing to cooperate. Abu Ghraib is another one that's just sick. The guy under the hood from this infamous picture taken at Abu Ghraib prison recently did a video interview talking about the torture he went through and what he saw. Including watching a boy being sodomized by a military translator in front of his father. Edit. I just remembered this and thought I should add it. Ali Soufan is an FBI agent who was one of the first people to interrogate Abu Zubaydah. They were using standard interrogation techniques and were building a rapport and getting information from him. Then they were told to stand down and the CIA, which has no training in interrogation, came in and started torturing him. He did a 2-part interview on 60 Minutes some years back about it. Part 1. Part 2. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.